Chicago. Just saying the name, it brings a lot to mind. Deep dish pizza, that amazing skyline, and yeah, a really, really vibrant nightlife.
Oh, absolutely.
And that energy after dark, it isn't just about having fun. It's actually a real powerhouse for the city's economy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit, because for this deep dive, we've managed to get our hands on some pretty fascinating analysis. It looks at exactly how people in Chicago, locals and visitors, are spending their money in the city's nightclubs.
Right.
We're looking at the trends from, say, 2020 right up to now, 2025, and even trying to get a peek at what things might look like, out to 2029.
And what's really interesting here is the sheer range of sources we've pulled together to try and understand this whole picture.
Yeah.
We're talking broad market reports that give us the national scene, then detailed spending surveys from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that's the BLS, the government folks who track this stuff specifically for Chicago.
Okay.
Then there's some really insightful stuff we've gleaned from social media, kind of reflecting what people are experiencing right now. Plus, we looked back at some older studies, to see how things have maybe shifted. And even perspectives from local outlets like Time Out Chicago, who really have their finger on the pulse there.
Exactly. So our mission here is really to sift through all of this stuff and just pull out the most important takeaways. We want to get a handle on the dollars and cents of Chicago's nightclub scene.
Right. Who's spending what?
Yeah, who's spending what, and maybe more importantly, what's driving those choices. Think of this as like your shortcut to really understanding this really dynamic part of Chicago. So, okay, with all this info, where do we even start?
Well, I think it helps to zoom out first, look at the bigger picture. The national market for bars and nightclubs, it's pretty big.
Okay.
We're talking $40.3 billion in revenue just last year, 2024. And what's really kind of striking is the growth we saw leading up to that.
How much growth?
An average of 11.4% each year over the 3 years before 2024. Pretty strong.
Wow. And the forecasts. They suggest this isn't just a blip. They're projecting the market could hit around $99 billion this year, 2025, and maybe, potentially, over $120 billion by 2029. Whoa, okay, those are some massive numbers.
Yeah.
What's fueling that kind of growth across the U.S.?
It seems to be a mix of things, really. You've got rising disposable incomes. People just have a bit more money to spend on going out. Urbanization plays a part, too. More people living in cities means more concentrated demand for nightlife. Then there's this trend towards wanting experiences over just stuff.
Right, the experience economy.
Exactly. Tourism is always a factor, of course. And, just the constant flow of new music and entertainment keep things fresh. It's also worth noting North America is actually the biggest regional market for this globally. So Chicago is definitely part of a major trend.
Okay, so that's the national scene. Big growth. What about Chicago specifically? I know you said we don't have like one neat number for nightclub spending.
No, not exactly. That specific data point is tricky to isolate. But we can definitely learn a lot by looking at broader spending categories.
Okay, like what?
So if we look at those consumer expenditure surveys from the BLS, focusing on the Chicago area, and we average out 2022 and 2023, we see some pretty telling figures.
Go on.
The average Chicago household spent around $80,000 a year total. Now, out of that, a decent chunk went to food away from home, over $4,200, which is like 5.3% of their total spend.
Okay, eating out.
Right. But what really jumps out is entertainment spending. That was $4,575, or 5.7% of their budget.
5.7%. How does that compare nationally?
That's actually quite a bit higher than the national average, which was 4.7% for entertainment.
Ah, okay. So the takeaway here isn't just the raw number. It's that Chicagoans seem to prioritize, or at least spend a bigger slice of their pie on, entertainment compared to the average American. That really sets the stage.
It does. It suggests a strong local appetite for leisure.
What about booze specifically? Alcohol spending?
Spending on alcoholic beverages was around $642 a year. That's 0.8% of the total spend, which is actually bang on the national average. But yeah, that higher overall entertainment spend is the key indicator, suggesting a real willingness to spend on leisure, which, definitely includes nightclubs.
And we've also gathered some, let's say, more on-the-ground info. What it's actually costing people for a night out in Chicago. like right now in 2025.
Yeah, we have. Looking at social media chatter, local articles this year, it paints a picture with a pretty wide range, actually.
Okay.
You've got folks trying to do it on the cheap, maybe $30, $50 for the night. That probably means, having drinks at home first, pre-gaming to save money at the actual club.
That classic pregame, yeah.
Totally. Then you've got the other end, people easily dropping $100, $200, maybe even more if they're doing dinner first, hopping between a few different places, factoring in Ubers or Lyfts.
Right.
Think about like a night out in Lakeview. Couple of Ubers, drinks at maybe 2 spots, maybe a late night slice of pizza that could easily hit $100 per person.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And if you're doing dinner and drinks for 2, you could be looking at $150 to $250 pretty easily. I mean, I know people who swear by pre-gaming and others who think nothing of spending a couple hundred on a Saturday night. It really shows that spectrum.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you mentioned the older study, too, that Eventbrite one from 2015. How did today's numbers stack up?
Yeah, that 2015 study was interesting because it found Chicagoans were actually spending the most overall on a night out compared to the other cities they surveyed back then.
Really?
Yeah, something like $38 on average for tickets or cover, $29 on drinks, $12 on transport, $11 on snacks. Now, obviously, it's older data, but it kind of reinforces this idea that Chicago has historically been a place where people are willing to spend for a night out.
And more recent estimates?
More recently, Time Out Chicago, looking at 2024, 2025, suggested a range from maybe $20, $30 at some more casual bars, but pushing up towards $150, $200 at the higher end lounges and clubs. So still a wide range, but maybe the top end has crept up.
And we absolutely cannot forget about tourism, right? All those visitors coming to Chicago.
Oh, definitely not. Huge factor. 55.3 million visitors in 2024, generating over $20 billion. A big slice of that pie goes straight into food, drinks, entertainment. It's a massive boost for nightlife.
Okay, so we've got this picture. Strong national market, Chicagoans keen on entertainment spending. What about the recovery since the pandemic? How has that specifically impacted this sector?
Right, the bounce back. Nationally, the bar and nightclub market definitely saw a strong recovery. Remember that 11.4% average annual growth leading up to 2024.
Yeah.
And if you look at spirits sold on-premise, meaning in bars and restaurants, by May 2025, sales were back to about 93% of what they were before COVID. Tequila, interestingly, was really leading that charge.
Tequila. Okay.
But menu prices have also shot up, like 25% higher on average since 2019.
Oof. Yeah, you feel that.
You do. And beer and wine haven't bounced back quite as strongly. They were sitting at maybe 83% and 66% of pre-COVID levels, respectively.
Interesting difference there. So people are definitely going back out, especially for spirits and cocktails maybe, but they're paying significantly more. What about Illinois specifically?
Illinois has also seen a pretty positive recovery overall. Visitor spending in 2023 actually beat 2019 levels, hitting $47.2 billion.
Wow.
And visitor spending on food and drinks was up quite a bit from 2022, almost back to pre-pandemic levels. But spending on recreation and entertainment by visitors, while it was also up, seemed to be recovering just a little bit slower than food and drinks.
That little lag. That might tell us something specific about places like nightclubs, right? As opposed to just restaurants. Their recovery path might be slightly different.
It does raise that question, yeah. The pace or maybe the nature of the recovery could be different for different kinds of nightlife spots. We also saw that foot traffic in Chicago's Loop late 2024 was back up to 88% of 2019 levels. So people are definitely back downtown. So overall, the picture suggests, a pretty strong rebound for Chicago nightlife is likely happening, but those price increases are definitely a factor people are dealing with. And maybe, just maybe, a slightly different recovery curve for the purely entertainment venues compared to dining.
Okay, that gives us a really good sense of the overall spending landscape. Now let's talk about who is doing the spending. Which groups are really shaping these trends in Chicago's clubs?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting looking at the demographics. Millennials and Gen Z are obviously key here.
Right.
Let's start with millennials. They're roughly, late 20s to early 40s now?
Yep, sounds right.
Nationally, they show a really strong preference for premium drinks. Way more likely to choose higher-end options compared to older groups. And surveys back in 2023 suggested a lot of them plan to seek out even more premium spirits in 2024.
That totally fits with that valuing experiences thing we talked about. Willing to pay a bit more for better quality, maybe?
Exactly. And the anecdotal stuff from Chicago this year backs that up. Reports suggest millennials are often willing to spend, anywhere from $50 up to maybe $250 for a whole night out, including drinks, maybe dinner, other entertainment. It shows demand for that fuller, higher quality experience.
Okay, makes sense for millennials. Now, Gen Z, the youngest adults hitting the scene, their habits seem a bit more complex.
They really do. Nationally, we're seeing this trend where Gen Z overall consumes less alcohol than older generations did at their age.
Right, I've read about that.
Yeah, a pretty significant number don't drink at all, and many others just drink occasionally. They're often painted as more, frugal, health conscious.
Yeah.
But they also really value experiences.
So are they actually going to nightclubs then? If they're drinking less and are frugal?
Well, here's the twist. They seem to have this tendency to overspend when they do go to specific events. Yeah, studies show a big majority, something like 86% admit they go over budget at things like concerts or festivals. It's the excitement, the atmosphere.
Okay, so what are they overspending on?
Food and drinks are actually a major category for that overspending, interestingly. Also, clothes and accessories they might buy just for that event. Music festivals, sports games, those are huge draws for them. And remember, they have massive global spending power, and social media is incredibly influential for them.
So it's this kind of duality. Generally careful with money, but then they'll splash out for the right kind of big event. How do nightclubs capture that?
That's the million-dollar question for venues, isn't it? The opportunity seems to be in positioning themselves not just as a regular club, but as hosting these unique can't-miss events, or creating really buzzworthy themed nights.
Gotcha.
And given how plugged into social media Gen Z is, things need to look good. Having those Instagrammable moments, unique activities, interactive stuff, that becomes super important for getting their attention and keeping it.
It makes perfect sense. Visuals and uniqueness. What about gender? Are we seeing any clear trends in who's filling these clubs?
Yes, actually. Some recent data from July 2024 suggested that women make up a pretty significant majority of nightclub goers nationally, maybe around 60%.
60%. Wow.
And what's more, women are now the main consumers of alcohol in the under 25 group.
Okay, that's huge.
It really is. It basically means nightclubs absolutely need to think about what resonates with women.
Yeah.
That's everything from the vibe, the drinks menu, and crucially, making sure the place feels safe and comfortable.
Absolutely critical. Okay, let's bring this back down to Chicago specifically. The city's own mix of people, incomes, lifestyles.
Yeah.
How does that play in?
Chicago's got this really diverse economic mix, right? A solid median income, but also a significant group living below the poverty line, and then, of course, a wealthier population, too.
Right.
And that mix, plus a large student population and middle class, contributes to what some call a kind of cost-conscious culture in many ways.
Okay, but didn't we just say they spend more on entertainment than average?
Exactly. That's the interesting part. Despite maybe being generally cost-aware, Chicagoans are willing to spend on dining out and entertainment when they feel they're getting good value for their money.
I see.
And then you look at the main nightlife hubs, River North, West Loop, Wicker Park. They tend to attract younger crowds, but they also have intense competition and higher operating costs, which just underlines again how important it is for venues there to really stand out, to offer something different.
So really understanding these different groups, the quality-seeking millennials, the event-driven Gen Z, the strong female presence, and this sort of value-conscious but entertainment-loving Chicagoan, that's all totally vital for any club trying to succeed.
Absolutely. It's all about tailoring the offer, the marketing, everything, to really connect with who's coming through the door and what makes them tick, what drives their spending.
Okay, so we've got a good handle on who's spending and roughly how much. Now, what about the bigger forces actually influencing those decisions? It's not just about demographics, is it?
No, definitely not. The wider economic climate is, well, huge. As of April this year, 2025, Chicago is seeing higher inflation, both overall and that core inflation number compared to the U.S. average.
Higher than average, okay.
Yeah. And what's really relevant for us is that inflation for categories like recreation and other goods and services was significantly higher in Chicago. Plus, we know the national price index for eating out food away from home is up too.
So basically, it just costs more to have fun in Chicago right now, even more so than elsewhere?
Right.
How's that hitting people's nightlife budgets?
Well, it likely puts more of a squeeze on local spending, right? Even if incomes are rising nationally, the fact that Chicagoans are facing steeper price hikes for going out, it could make them more choosy.
Hmm.
Maybe they go out a bit less often or spend a bit less each time. Younger folks might still go for those big splurge-worthy events we talked about, but overall frequency and per-visit spending could be, constrained by these economic pressures.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's harder to rationalize buying that extra round when your rent and groceries have jumped up too. What about the flip side? The costs for the nightclubs themselves, that has to affect prices too.
Oh, absolutely. That's a critical piece of the puzzle. Rising rents and general operating costs, that's a national issue, but it seems especially tough in Chicago. Rent is apparently the #1 financial headache for bars and restaurants there.
I believe it.
And we've heard anecdotes, stories of drink prices basically doubling since before the pandemic. Though maybe cover charges have come down in some places to compensate, it's hard to say for sure.
And staffing.
Yeah.
Always tough in hospitality.
Huge challenge. Labor costs are a major worry for Chicago operators, partly because of the rules around the tipped minimum wage. Plus, just finding and keeping good staff high turnover is a constant battle.
And I remember reading Chicago has some pretty complex rules around licenses and things too.
Oh, yeah. It can be a maze. Different types of liquor licenses, like a tavern versus what they call a COP, consumption on premises license, they have different rules. Then you've got areas where they've put moratoriums, bans on new licenses, plus special late-hour licenses if you want to stay open really late.
Wow.
And Illinois just brought in new rules about co-branded or infused alcohol products fairly recently, which also changes what places can serve. All these high costs and tricky regulations, they definitely create barriers for new places trying to open and put serious financial pressure on existing ones. It might even favor bigger companies or really innovative models that can keep overhead super low.
So it sounds like those license types, like tavern versus cop, they could really dictate the kind of business you can run, what you can offer, what your hours are.
Exactly. They have different restrictions, different requirements. It adds another layer of complexity for operators. We might even see nightlife start shifting geographically as people look for areas with maybe fewer restrictions or lower rents.
So it's not just about attracting customers. It's this constant struggle to stay afloat with all these background costs and rules. What about things happening outside the club scene, like tourism or more people working from home? How do they fit in?
Those external factors are really important too. We already touched on the strong tourism rebound, all those visitors spending money. Big city events are definitely a huge plus for nightlife.
Right.
Remote work, though, that's a bit more of a mixed bag. The forecast is maybe 22% of people will keep working from home long term. That could mean less foot traffic near traditional office districts, which might hurt bars there.
Sure. Fewer after-work drinks.
Exactly. Though you see initiatives like Work from Summertime She trying to draw people back downtown. And, maybe working from home gives some people more flexibility, more free time, maybe even a bit more disposable income if they're saving on commuting. Perhaps that could boost spending on going out, just maybe in different neighborhoods or at different times.
Interesting. And just how the city itself develops, new buildings, new areas, that must change the nightlife map too.
Absolutely. Things like downtown investment programs can spur development, and history shows us that nightlife districts often shift as cities evolve, maybe due to urban renewal or changing preferences. The current big trend seems to be towards these mixed-use developments, places with shops, apartments, and entertainment all bundled together.
Ah, okay. Live, work, play, all in one spot.
Kind of, yeah. That could be really key for nightclubs long term, giving them a built-in local customer base, not just relying on destination visitors. And yeah, that link between big events and tourism success, that definitely points to an opportunity for clubs to align themselves with what's happening in the city.
Okay, and one last big factor, maybe the biggest, for some people deciding whether to go out at all. Safety, security.
Yeah, absolutely crucial. And the picture in Chicago is a bit, well, mixed. Crime stats in 2024 showed some good news drops in homicides, shootings, but increases in other violent crimes, aggravated assaults were apparently at a 20-year high, so the narrative isn't simple. Nationally, the whole industry is putting a big emphasis on creating safe environments. And if you look back, safety and liability concerns have unfortunately led to clubs closing in the past. So being proactive, really investing in safety measures, and just as importantly, telling people about those measures, that's essential for building trust and, frankly, staying competitive.
Wow, okay. So it's this really complex web there from then economic pressures, business costs, what's happening in the wider city, and this fundamental need for safety all swirling together and shaping how people spend money in Chicago's nightclubs.
Exactly. It's a constantly moving target for everyone involved.
Okay, so we've covered the recent past, the present situation. Let's put on our future-gazing hats now. Looking ahead towards, say, 2029, what kinds of trends do we think will really shape Chicago's nightclub scene?
Well, I think we'll definitely see this push towards more innovative experiences continue, probably even accelerate.
Okay.
Nationally, you're seeing investment in venues that are using tech in cool ways, have really unique designs, offer something more immersive. Think beyond just a DJ and a dance floor, like that place Stormzy opened in London. Multi-level, different themes, activities. It's a destination.
Right.
The drivers seem to be people wanting more engaging ways to socialize, a move towards more specialized concepts, maybe not just nightclub, but VR sports bar or live music lounge with craft cocktails, incorporating different kinds of entertainment.
So maybe fewer of those traditional, dark, sweaty dance clubs and more
Yeah.
versatile entertainment hubs.
That feels like the direction, yeah. Venues that can offer different things, maybe appeal to different crowds or even operate at different times. You hear about sober nights becoming popular, daytime parties, even art shows in club spaces.
Interesting.
Now, that kind of versatility probably needs more upfront cash to set up, but it could open up more ways to make money. We might also see more of those pop-up themed experiences in Chicago. They're great for testing ideas, creating that fear of missing out FOMO, which really works for younger crowds.
And what are we likely to be drinking in these future spots? Any big shifts on the beverage front?
Oh, definitely. That premiumization trend, it's still going strong, especially for spirits and cocktails, and especially with younger adults. 1834.
Tequila again?
Tequila's still hot, yeah. And those ready-to-drink RTD canned cocktails are huge. Chicago clubs can really lean into this with sophisticated, high-quality spirits, creative craft cocktails.
Okay.
But at the same time, there's this booming demand for good non-alcoholic options, not just soda water with lime.
Right. Actual mocktails that taste like something.
Exactly. Having a thoughtful, appealing NA menu is becoming basically essential. It's about inclusivity, and it's key for attracting that Gen Z crowd that drinks less. Craft beer's still popular too, and there's even room for fun innovation there, unique ingredients, maybe even like high-end Jell-O shots or something.
Okay, so it sounds like the drink itself, the whole presentation and quality, is becoming just as important as the alcohol content, maybe even more so for some people.
I think that's exactly right. The taste, how it looks, the quality, is it new or interesting? That's the experience part, extending right into the glass.
So clubs need a proper beverage program.
Yes. With skilled bartenders who can nail a classic old-fashioned, but also whip up an amazing zero-proof creation, and making those NA options visible, not an afterthought. RTDs are convenient, sure, but venues need to be smart about pricing them against those more profitable, handcrafted cocktails.
Okay, so it's not just the spaces and the drinks changing, it's also about how people's actual habits and expectations for a night out are evolving.
Precisely. We know young Americans are generally drinking less. We know the cost of everything is up, including a night out. And people are maybe spending more leisure time at home. That all challenges the old nightclub model.
How so?
Well, for Gen Z, socializing isn't always about a big planned Saturday night out. It might be more spontaneous, everyday enjoyment that they share online. So maybe clubs need to find ways to facilitate that. Or offer more frequent, lower stakes kinds of events.
Oh.
Plus, lingering concerns about health, hygiene post-pandemic, maybe a growing interest in sustainability. Those could influence where people choose to spend their money too. We might even see more demand for shorter nights out, maybe starting and ending earlier.
And that Gen Z thing about sharing online.
Yeah, tapping into that trend. Some call romanticizing the everyday, designing little moments, little corners within the venue that are just really aesthetically pleasing, cool art, a unique little lounge area, a signature cocktail that looks amazing. Those become micro experiences people want to capture and share. Free marketing, basically.
Clever. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together. What's the overall growth forecast looking like for Chicago's nightclub scene, considering everything? And what are the potential bumps in the road ahead?
Nationally, the outlook is still pretty positive. Remember that projection towards $120 billion by 2029? Key drivers are things like healthier drink options, social media buzz, hopefully continued economic growth, rising incomes.
But for Chicago specifically?
Chicago has its own set of challenges. Those high startup costs we mentioned, high operating costs, especially rent and labor, those aren't going away. And there was that perception, maybe a few years back, that Chicago's nightlife options lagged behind some other big cities.
Okay, the headwinds. What about the strengths?
Chicago definitely has strong points, too. Tourism is bouncing back robustly. The local population is willing to spend on entertainment. As we saw, there's ongoing urban development, creating new opportunities. And people here seem to really like variety.
So growth is possible, but maybe not guaranteed.
I think Chicago's growth in this area really hinges on innovation and differentiation. Just opening another version of an existing club might be tough. Success will likely favor those who offer something genuinely unique, cater to niche tastes, use technology smartly, and that consumer desire for variety. Maybe that opens the door for more collaboration between venues like district-wide events or marketing efforts.
Okay, so just to wrap up this deep dive on Chicago nightclub spending, we've seen it's a really dynamic market. It's definitely riding national growth waves, but it's also got its own unique currents, like that higher local inflation and those tough operating costs.
Right.
Generational differences are huge. Millennials looking for premium, Gen Z, maybe more about those big splurge-worthy events. And looking ahead, the future really seems to point towards clubs becoming more like multifaceted experiences, more diverse drink menus, including really good non-alcoholic stuff. And this constant need for businesses to adapt to how we're all changing our habits, plus those ongoing safety concerns.
And it's fascinating how all those threads kind of weave together, isn't it? Creating new challenges, but also new possibilities.
Absolutely. Which kind of leads us to our final thought for you, our listener. Thinking about all these trends we've just talked about, the rise of these more immersive venues, the changing drink landscape, shifting expectations, the whole Chicago context. What kind of really new, really innovative nightlife experiences might we actually see pop up in the Windy City over the next few years? How do you think that balance might shift between the traditional idea of a nightclub and these more, versatile entertainment spaces? And what role will tech and social media play in shaping it all? Definitely something to chew on, maybe even something to go out and explore for yourself next time you're out and about in one of Chicago's neighborhoods. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.